is Animal on Control. Welcome to the voice chat. These calls are pre-recorded for uploading to social media, and by joining a call, you are consenting to being recorded. Anyone wishing to join a call should email me at animaloncontrol@gmail.com, and I will reply with instructions. Today's topics: blinded by Husky, euphemistic language, miscellany, and perhaps we'll talk about some land use stuff if that becomes relevant. The first two topics actually were commenter requests. I believe there's a frequent commenter in the space. Their handle is "dogs are not pets." And they requested that we discuss this case here. This woman was blinded in her right eye when she was walking her husky on a retractable leash. And apparently the dog pulled the handle out of her hand, which caused it, I guess, because of the spring mechanism. It whipped around. I don't know exactly how this could happen, but in any case, it whipped around. It hit her in the face, destroying her right eye. So she now has a glass eye or some kind of prosthetic eye. What also I found interesting about this, pursuant to some of the prior conversations about Huskies, big smiley face, if you can guess which state in which she lives. Here's a hint: it's not Alaska.
Oh, God. Okay, so I had to be put on mute real quick because I was on the floor laughing. Has to be hysterical. Boy, these nutters just don't quit. So I'm going to chalk this up to training. She didn't train it properly.
Right.
But, okay, so state. Oh, man. Let me see.
Here's a hint. What's the worst state in which you could possibly own a Siberian sled dog? And it's not Alaska.
Arizona.
Close. Yeah, she lives in Florida. Yeah, she lives in.
Yeah, man, I was going to say Florida.
Yeah, Arizona's pretty bad too. My brother lives in Tucson. He says, "Oh yeah, it was 120 today." But it's a dry heat. But so is an oven. So I know maybe you're right. Maybe Arizona would be worse. But this woman lives in Florida. And yeah, she was walking her husky, and I guess the dog went chasing after a rabbit. The leash handle whipped around and hit her in the face. But I was wondering, there's a couple of things. As I noted earlier, I had to reboot, so I got a little discombobulated. But I was looking up, how strong are these dogs? Like, how much linear force can one of these dogs create, right? So it says a husky can exert a pulling force of roughly 45 to 80 kilograms, which translates to 99 to 176 pounds. That's how hard they can pull. Very few people can handle that. I mean, think about it. How many people can, say, pick a 100-pound dumbbell up off the ground? Not very many. I'm not sure. Maybe I used to be able to do that. I'm not sure I could now.
To be perfectly honest, when I was younger, one of my first official jobs was I worked at Petland. And I know everybody knows about Petland. And to even get even more deep into it, the big puppy mill scam, the court case and everything, I happen to be one of the defendants. So if I go into the dog space, I can go really deep on nutters. They really don't want me to open up my encyclopedia knowledge on them.
Yeah.
Because I've gone hard for these stupid mutts before, and I would never do it again.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, but real quick, excuse me. The point about it is, I guarantee you she had the wrong leash for that dog. Because what happens is people used to buy the wrong retractable leashes because of the pretty colors, because the larger size ones only come in black or blue. And the pretty color ones come in the smaller dog size, the pink, the greens, the grays, the teals, and all of that. So people will try to get it more of a fashion accessory as opposed to what it's actually intended for. So I
Yep.
think that, and this is my theory here, is that she got the wrong one. Secondly, no, you're not going to be able to hold those dogs back. Once they get running, that's why they tell you don't use retractable leashes for pulling dogs, sled dogs, bully breeds. You need to get a thick belt type leash. So that
Yep.
way, the only thing they're going to do is take you off your feet. With the retractable leashes, it says on there, there's a caution they can break and can
Yep.
cause blindness.
Oh, really? So it's probably not
Yeah.
I'm sure this is not the first time something like this has happened.
This is
Um,
just, it's been recorded and now it's being brought up in the dog space. Oh, I got blind. Well, that's your fault.
well, I mean, it's their fault just for, bringing something, owning it, something like this in the first place. I mean, dog people are the only pet owners that can own an animal this powerful, at least without all kinds of special permitting, right? Like, cat people can't just own pet mountain lions without restrictions. Because it's very few people can manage this kind of thing. But I actually looked this up too. I mean, probably the break strength of the leash depends on the brand and how it's made. But the Red Dog retractable pocket leash has a break strength of 80 pounds, and the large size has a strength of 130 pounds. So that's
So either
considered.
one would not work.
Yep. I mean, because even if you're strong enough to hold the dog back, like let's say you're a power lifter with a 500-pound bench press and an 800-pound squat, that dog is just going to break that thing, bing, and it's gone, right? So really, you might as well just use a piece of dental floss or something.
Or use voice command. That's what
Yeah.
they love to use.
Rover, no, bad Rover, come back. They don't care, And they also got to think too is I always wonder if this like consistent pulling force, because when you think about it, like if it pulls that retractable leash to, like, let's say it's unwinding, right? So when it hits its stop, you probably have, all that sort of pent up kinetic energy is released in that millisecond, right? So that's could be way more than, 99 to 176 pounds. It might be 2 or 3 times that, right? That's what I'm thinking. I don't have a PhD in physics or anything, but clearly, though, you don't need to be to see this a bad. And a husky in Florida is just a terrible idea anyway. Again, they're Siberian sled dogs. It's not a fit. Even if you like dogs, it's not a fit environment for them to begin with. And then you have problems like this on top of it. So anyway, that was what. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, not to cut you off, but we also have to look at it too. That's a Siberian Husky in Florida. People don't buy dogs for the practical uses that they're supposedly were bred for. Obviously, like natty dogs, because they don't nanny, they maul children. But the
Yep.
other thing is people buy dogs as a fashion accessory. They
Yep.
buy a dog because of the way it looks. They don't buy a dog for the purpose of where it comes from. So they'll get like what the dog with the dreadlocks, that Norwegian dog,
Yeah.
and then they'll get a Great Pyrenees. Like when I worked at Petland, we had people ordering those dogs for California. Like it's Santa Monica. This is beach weather. You don't need a Great Pyrenees for the beach, but people would
Right.
buy these dogs. And this was what I was 19 at the time. So this was well back in the 2000s, in the early 2000s. So actually, no, the early 90s, because I graduated in 1990. Now I think about it, so that had to be like 92.
Yep.
So that was back then, and they were very, very finite nutters back then.
Yeah. Well, back then, I guess it wasn't as crazy as it is now. Certainly. Not in most places. Yeah, I'd have thought. I have. Well, it's an extra credit assignment for you. If you could maybe at some point think of all the craziness you were witness to or subject to in your pet store experience, and maybe relate that, that would be, very, very interesting.
Oh boy, yeah.
May
I
not
can tell
do
you
it
guys
now,
about my run
may,
with the SPCA. No, no, you're gonna love it. Trust me, I got plenty.
yeah, I'm sure you do. Interestingly, because I worked for a couple of veterinarians in high school. And well, the one, I think I've spoken about this a few times. The second one I worked for was an equestrian, an equine specialist. He only treated horses. So he was completely outside the mud matrix. The other one I worked for, the first one that actually worked for the most, had a general practice, but there I basically pretty much only worked with the horses. Like the small animals, I didn't really have much to do with them, because what he would do is, or with the other one also, is they would strip mine the local high school for cheap labor. But the thing is, like, I was, even though it was a rural area, I was the only, there really weren't a lot of kids that knew how to handle horses. So basically, that was my job. So I was working with the horses or doing something not directly related to the practice, like mowing the lawn or doing odd jobs or whatever. So I didn't really have a lot of experience with the dogs there. I mean, I've got a few anecdotes, but I really didn't have much to do with them. Probably, fortunately, at the time. But
Very fortunately.
yeah.
Oh, I noticed, but we were kind of chit chatting. We kind of did this a little informally this time, but Sheepy's with us.
Oh, is she? Yeah, sorry, I got the. What's up, Sheepy?
Hey, what's up? I was just enjoying listening.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we were talking about Huskies in Florida because I'm not sure when you joined, but I had one of the commenters request that I discuss this case about this woman who lost an eye due to her husky pulling on the leash, and we were talking about the absurdity of huskies in Florida, really anywhere south of the U.S. Canadian border. I don't know if you had any thoughts on this.
I mean, I agree with everything. And I remember when I visited San Francisco, I saw huskies there. And I was just like, I think I mentioned it at the time, but it's like, if you care about dogs, like, why would you get a husky and take it to the beach or like keep a husky in like an apartment in Houston, Texas, or like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just completely uh it's just nonsensical, but we know these people, like, they don't think about what they're actually doing. I really don't get the appeal of huskies. I was just reading yesterday, I was revisiting some of the cases with huskies killing infants, because they're really notorious for that. And it's also the the case where they use the language, the tooth punctured the infant's skull, or
Yep.
like the most ridiculous, almost
Yeah.
probably the most
We
ridiculous
were.
line I've ever heard.
It's interesting you bring that up because we were going to segue into that because the other request was to discuss the sort of all the passive aggressive euphemistic language that nutters use to sort of obfuscate either the true nature of an individual dog or dogs generally, or a specific incident, like you said, like a dog killing an infant, for example. We're going to dive into that later because that's always fun to talk. As was Mercury's Orbit asked about that, he's like, could you discuss reactive dogs? It's like, oh, reactive, yes, let's talk about that. But that's yeah, the dog reacted. He's reactive. Is he like radioactive? But yeah,
Well,
this
the other thing, and not to jump in real
go ahead.
quick and see, this is where me being a nerd just really kicks into play. Is also that there is also a encyclopedia book on dogs. And just because I was bored working at Petland back in the day, I read that book cover to cover. And
Oh,
see, this is what nutters need to understand about people like us. We're smarter than they think.
Yep.
Every one of the dog breeds, it tells you whether or not the dog is good around children, around other dogs, around other cats, around any other pets, and so on and so forth. And the majority of these dogs that they're putting in these households that they coveted so much are not children-friendly dogs. These
Yep.
dogs notoriously attack and don't like children, which is why I brought up a long time ago. If you remember firehouses out here, they all used to have, when I was growing up, they used to have a Dalmatian at the firehouses. That was part of the allure of a fireman, was that stupid Dalmatian at the firehouse. You know
Yep.
why they got rid of Dalmatians? Because they were notoriously biting children. They were attacking children. Dalmatians hate children. That's why they created the movie 101 Dalmatians, to try to make them more lovable for children, but they don't like children. That's why you don't see Dalmatians around much anymore.
Yeah, they
Yeah, they're actually an pretty aggressive breed.
Very
yeah, they
aggressive.
well, I mean, many dog breeds are aggressive. I mean, normally, like, everybody focuses on pit bulls, and yeah, pit bulls are disproportionately involved in, like, the really bad outcomes where, say, somebody is completely ripped to pieces. But still, many, probably even most other dog breeds, are inherently aggressive. Perhaps it's non-lethal, but again, death is not the only bad outcome. So, yeah, it's
I wouldn't
interesting. And
trust it.
probably when you read that, because you said this was back in the early 90s. Back then, I think people were more reasonable or more pragmatic about this stuff, right? They weren't pushing nanny dog myths or any of that kind of stuff. Even dogs, as you bring up 101 Dalmatians, there was another one of those Disney movies with a dog in it was Peter Pan, the animated feature. It came out in the 50s, I think. And interesting, in the book, there was a dog named Nana that was sort of like a nanny dog. And I forget what dog breed it was in the book, but in the movie, Nana,
Saint
at least
Bernard.
Saint Bernard, was
It
presented
was
as
a
a
Saint
Saint
Bernard.
Bernard in the movie. Yeah. And it was interesting. I think, I don't know, maybe it was all of us were on a call a while back. We were looking at dog bite related fatalities from the 70s. And actually, the most dangerous dog breed, at least in terms of death, in 1974 was a St. Bernard. I think there was like 5 dog bite related fatalities, and 2 of them were St. Bernards. Both of them were young children. It was a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old, maybe. And I also recall too, as maybe that time frame, maybe a little later, because I was up, I had family on both sides in Vermont. I grew up in New Jersey, but I had family on both sides up in Vermont, and one of them was my uncle, my dad's brother, and his family lived up there. And we went up to visit them one summer, and they used to like to hang out at it was this bar and restaurant that had a Swiss chalet motif, if you can kind of picture that. And they had a St. Bernard tied up in back, right? And I'd known about the dog. I think I was maybe 6 years old, right? So after we got to their place, we proceeded to this venue. So I jump out of the car because I wanted to see the dog, because I think we just seen that movie. So I wanted to see the St. Bernard, right? And remember, and my uncle grabbed me by the arm. He's like, no, don't go back there, which is really out of character for him. Everybody was really shocked at how he reacted. And it turned out that a St. Bernard, not that dog, but another St. Bernard, had scalped a kid nearby, and I don't know if it was in their town, but nearby just recently. And so people are having conversations like, okay, are these things safe to have around, and that kind of thing. So yeah, many dogs are aggressive towards, well, I guess pretty much everything, and they probably see the child as, they don't think of the child as a sibling. It's just, another animal competing for resources.
Yeah, but the nutter's like, oh, no, that's your brother and sister. You know,
Sure.
damn well that dog does not look, when that dog's attacking them, Okay, you know what? We're not going to get biblical, but unless your children are named Cain and Abel, they're not killing each other.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to segue into, was the other comment or request was Mercury's Orbit wanted to talk about, quote, reactive dogs. I think, and I replied to their comment. I said, well, you know, reactive is another example of the passive aggressive euphemistic language, right? That's designed to deceive, that's deployed by, you know, nutters and various dog apologists. Because rather than say, okay, the dog is violent or the dog will attack or the dog has attacked, they say he's reactive, like he's reacting to something. Like I said, it's euphemistic and it's used to obfuscate or obscure the true nature of the dog. One thing I wanted to run through, and again, that's just an example of it. There's tons of examples. This page on dogsbite.org, and again, I'm actually a paid member of dogsbite.org because, like, well, mainly because I use it as a reference so often. And, you know, Colleen does great work. I mean, it's more specialized than, say, like what I do. Mostly just focuses on the dangerous dog problem, but there's a big problem, and really it's a fraud, it's a scam with the way that dog shelters particularly, but dog people and dangerous dog apologists use this euphemistic language that's designed to deceive. So what Colleen did was she put together this chart that translates, you know, nutter dangerous dog apologist speak into readily understandable language, right? So supposed to, like, for example, here's the term: dog has separation anxiety. So what does that mean? It's a term that can cloak severe aggression, like jumping out of a glass window. I've heard of that. Pit bulls and maybe even other dogs will actually they'll jump through a glass window to get to its intended target. Okay, and it has all these, and it starts too as a meaning to talk about the risk level. So if we go down a bit, like very high, like dog needs a unicorn home, right? So what does that mean? Dog is so animal aggressive, anxious, and a resource guarder that it can only tolerate a fantasy home with zero stimuli. And often the dog is on drugs to prevent it from attacking. So offensive aggression, you know, uninterruptible drive, that's a good one. Dog will kill another dog on sight. I mean, that's not such a bad thing. Hardy har har. And will climb a fence to do it. Right. So then they ask, are you a select family? Like, you know, it makes it sound very like the family is very, you know, elite or special somehow. Are you a select family? Right. So basically, essentially, you dumb enough to own a dog like this. What else?
No, what'll end up happening is, not to cut you off, they'll end up putting putting the dog in the house with one of those cyber robots. You can't have a goldfish or nothing around. Attack everything, anything living. It's just ridiculous.
Dog is a velvet hippo or a house hippo. It's funny they use a hippo because a hippopotamus is actually very aggressive. They're one of the more dangerous large animals on Earth. It's like not, I mean, we don't have them in the U.S. except in zoos, but it's really not something you want. So it's ironic that they use that. I mean, probably a lot of people think, oh, hippos are cute because they get the bug eyes and they're, you know, chubby and all that stuff, but they're actually pretty dangerous. So what they're saying is Shelter is trying to offload a high-risk pit bull to the public. I wonder if the term reactive is in here. Let me see if they have, like, probably it is, but we know it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, dog is, well, actually, it looks like there's a dog is fear reactive that has stolen many hearts, meaning to like rip the heart right out of somebody's chest. Was that the outcome? The dog will attack people and pets and has been returned many times. So what else have we got? Dog is dog reactive, dog aggressive specific, as if it presents no danger to humans, right? Yeah, because that's anthropomorphizing. A dog that'll attack other animals probably will attack humans, particularly children. What else we got? Reactive towards other dogs. Dog will kill a dog. That's what that means. What else have we got? Dog is reactive. Means a dog is aggressive and lacks impulse control. Okay, this dog, okay, what? Yeah, this dog killed a person hours after adoption. So then they say dog is getting more and more reactive. Kinks was part of the KBOA investigation into Pima Animal Care Center. It's interesting how some of these dog shelters, there's like a handful of them that just keep popping up over and over and over again. Pima County Animal Care is one of them. Okay. The dog's kennel card only stated, I need a dog introduction. So what else do we got? So dog is like a pet peeve, leash reactive. The only who've been whipped. What else have we got? Reactive. Okay, now we're getting into comments. So yeah, dog is reactive. So again, this is a euphemism for, again, dog aggression. That the dog is aggressive and perhaps will even kill a person. But also you see cases like what Sheepie just brought up with, many dog bite related fatalities is, yeah, they put it, it's often reported in this type of, like I said, passive aggressive euphemistic language where they'll say, well, child dies in accident involving family dog. Now, one of us would probably read that and be like, okay, the dog killed the kid, right? We could translate that because we're initiated into the space. But somebody who isn't, somebody who's not knowledgeable in the space would not think that, right? It's like, okay, what was the nature of the accident, right? Were they on the space shuttle Challenger when that blew up? Like, how is that? But that's the kind of language they use to, obfuscate either the nature of the dog or what happened. And as Sheepie pointed out earlier, with a lot of these huskies killing infants, they say, well, the dog put its mouth upon the baby's head, and the dog's tooth punctured the baby's skull. It's almost like the dog slipped and its mouth hit the kid in the head, rather than think, yeah, the dog bit the kid on the head and causing death, right? So, it's a dog bite related fatality, but they use, again, that really passive language, in it, provided it's even reported at all, right? Because even if you look at these, whether it's a dog in a shelter or a dog bite related fatality or some kind of dog attack, it might not be reported at all, right? So you have those kind of cases where really nothing is said about it, or you have a lot of incidents where they use that passive language. Thoughts, folks?
In my opinion,
this
quickly.
is the name of the game for them. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, ladies first, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, this is just, I feel like it just kind of, as time goes on, they become even more creative, and I don't even know what to say, honestly. It's just so ridiculous. I think this list is great, and like actually defining what they mean by these things.
Yep.
And I think the list is going to continue to grow because I've said this before, and I think this demonstrates it. Dog nutters just have like a severe disconnect with reality itself. And it's almost like you've heard, people who lie so much they start believing their own lies and stuff like that. I feel like that's the point these people are at. Like, they're just so full of shit that they like believe all of this. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes too is like it's interesting. Sometimes as if I forget who said it, it's a quote, but I think it's true that if someone tells a lie often enough, after a while they start to believe it. And I've seen examples of that, in my life. Maybe not necessarily in this space, but that's what happens because they just keep lying about something over and over. And I guess at some point they internalize it. So it actually becomes true to them. So in a sense, they're not lying because they actually believe it, even though it's not true. But it also raises the issue also is that if you look at dog culture and generally, dog cult ideology, if you have to lie constantly to promote the ideals or to keep the culture afloat, maybe you got yourself a bad culture. Like nothing good requires lying, because that's really what this is. You could say, okay, maybe there's not a flat out lie. They're not saying, oh, the dog is perfectly safe, but these kind of euphemisms are, used to deceive. So they're for practical purposes, they're lying when they say these things. And you got to think that the dog culture or the nature of the dogs themselves, if dogs were so great, why do they have to keep lying about them like this? Why is that? That's the thought experiment.
Well, to add to both of your points, I mean, that's all I was going to say in a nutshell is like, if we've looked at dog culture over the years, all they do is regurgitate the same things over and over again, even with my channel. It's like I don't even want to debate with them anymore. I appreciate you coming on and setting up a target for me to easily shoot at, but it's not even fun shooting at it anymore because you're just saying the same thing, dude. You're saying the same thing 100 million other people have already said. So why don't you guys snap out of this matrix and realize they're not all that great? Not everybody loves them.
Yep.
There is that point too. It's like I say in rebut to that. It's like nobody there was a time when people didn't like cats, and if you said you had a cat and someone said they didn't like it, there was no qualm, there was no problem, there was no discussion about it. But you say you don't like a dog, it's like the second coming of the creator came down and slapped everybody in the face and said, nope, you guys all believed a lie, I'm really a woman. It's like, no, it's not the truth. It's like, stop playing games with me. It's omnipotent. It's beyond that. Like the knowledge for dogs, you don't have any.
Yeah, I stopped trying to engage them on any kind of intellectual or reasonable level a long time ago. I see, like, all respect to him, Kanon. I don't get the wrong idea. I think Kanon is great, but he'll engage them at an intellectual level. But the problem is, see, dog nutters don't have an intellectual.
They don't have it. Exactly.
So they don't have an intellect. So when I gave up, like I said, doing that. I mean, I'll engage these things at an intellectual level, such as I'm doing now, but usually only with other people like yourselves that actually have an intellectual level. But the thing is, if I engage the adversary at all, usually I just snark on them, right? Like if they start, mouthing off, I'll say something to them like, hey, you know how you can lose a lot of ugly pounds? Get rid of your dog, hardy, har, har. I don't even bother trying to reason it out with them because it doesn't. And, and this happens even in the public policy space. Pursuant to what you just said, now either of you are familiar with the Selesky case. That was it was in Baltimore back in the 2000s. A young boy named Dominic Selesky was mauled by a pit bull. It almost died. The dog tore out his femoral artery, I believe. It's whatever the main artery is in the leg, and he almost bled to death. He survived. So, his parents became, activists. They sort of agitated to get some laws changed. And it was funny because I was listening to a podcast with his dad, and I actually I featured this in one of my monologues. I think I called it the Mud Matrix. And but one point it was Tony is Dominic's dad. He said they would go to these public meetings, and he said what's interesting is that their meaning, the Nutters, dialogue or narrative is completely flat. It doesn't go anywhere. So they brought all these people in to speak, and they all said the same thing over and over and over again, including things that really were just patently stupid, like, well, if you want to restrict pit bulls, it's, bigoted or racist or whatever. But that's it. They just say the same things over and over again. They repeat. But also, pursuant to what Sheepie said, they do, every once in a while, they do introduce something into the vernacular, like a lot of this stuff, but they keep saying that the old things, right? And maybe every once in a while they introduce something like, say, like reactive. I don't know when the first time they used the term reactive. I think it's probably relatively recently, within the last 10 years or so. But again, it's another, again, it's like they have his alarm barking. He needs transitional. He's head shy. Dog is head shy, right? The dog gets so excited it can't help but to jump on you. What does that mean? The dog is a potential disaster. Dog is, well, here's a good one. Dog is a ladies' man. Yes, Fido's a ladies' man. What does that mean?
This dog will attack men.
Yeah, that's what it means. And the dog attacks men. That's what it means. And you see
also you have to, real quick, you know what? I'm just gonna throw this theory out there. I think this all started when they came up with the theory there's no bad dogs. Yep. And that, they couldn't euthanize dogs anymore. So what they had to do was they told everybody, we need a whole lot of Dr. Seuss writers out here and a lot of Anne Rice and a lot of Tolkien writers out there to come up with these creative ways to save these dogs. And that's all they're doing. Like you said, Sheepie said, they'll come up with one creative way, but that's just one Dr. Seuss in the flurry of nutters out there. Most of them are just talking like the newspaper. Dog is great. Dog is beautiful. Dogs are smart. Dogs are this, they come up with those retarded robotic talking points. And then you got these elaborate ones. Well, you like Caesar, you got to be the alpha. And then you got this other one over here where you got to treat it with kisses. And then they're still getting bitten, mauled, and attacked. So obviously you need to just get rid of them and stop coming up with lies.
Yeah.
There's a hilarious one. If you scroll back up a couple, I don't think you've read this one. I just saw it. It's so funny. So the dog is fear reactive that has stolen many hearts. This dog will attack people and pets and has been returned many times.
Oh, it's stealing hearts, all right. It's eating them.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's reactive. What's he reacting to? And I don't know what the ocean has.
Your heartbeat.
Yeah, your heartbeat.
Your heartbeat. It's your heartbeat.
Yeah. Your heart.
You're breathing. You're taking up. What's the other thing too? Is like talk about. They say, well, dogs don't attack unprovoked or whatever, but that's the problem. Is that's pretty nebulous. Like define provocation. Like, what do you have to like? Okay, what's the threshold where a dog can attack a person? Well, the thing is, and according to them, it's basically non-existent. Literally anything can provoke a dog. You say, well, I was just standing there. And it's like, well, you should have been moving. Like whatever it is, it's always the victim's fault or some third party. And it's like, look, just get over it. It's like, many dogs just, they commit violent acts because they enjoy it. They like it. And it did, it's often pit bulls, but not always. My opinion, no dog should ever injure a person. And I would even go as far as to say, you know what, if somebody catches a dog and tortures it with a blowtorch, even that's not justification for the dog to attack that person. And I say that even some people in our space might think, okay, that's kind of extreme. But the problem is if it's ever justified, that's the proverbial inch. Then everything becomes justification for the dog to project aggression towards, humans or perhaps other animals. There needs to be like zero tolerance for this stuff because, look, the threshold for using violence against, human beings is one, it's a right reserved for human beings, like it's by people for people. Okay, dogs don't have that, right? So there's never a good reason for a dog to attack somebody, ever. I don't care what they're doing. And I think that needs to be our narrative because that's the kind of thing to say, oh, dog is, well, he's spunky. He likes to body crash. He has kennel aggression, meaning that,
This
well, they
dog
think,
will tear your ACL as it bolts into you. Like,
yeah, exactly. Dog, needs,
Oh,
dog
okay,
needs,
so real quick, not to cut you off, then what's the threshold for children then? If that's for adults, then children supposedly do these invisible things that dogs just pick up on and just attack them. So where's their defense in this?
yeah, well, there's no good reason for a dog to attack a human being of any age, ever, period.
That's what I would say, but
Yep.
not to a nutter.
Well, yeah, well, they think anything is an excuse. But that's the thing is some people might argue that's unreasonable. Like, let's say maybe it is some kind of legit self-defense scenario. Like a person attacks the owner and the dog bites the attacker. But part of it, that even fits with, we've been having some self-defense discussions on here, and that the thing is that, dogs do not have the right to, commit acts of violence against humans ever. Just like we were talking about the whole right to life thing, and the Supreme Court ruled in 1897, the dogs do not have a right to life that man is bound to respect. And I would also say they do not have a right to commit, to self-defense or to any act of violence, lethal or not, that we're bound to respect. So even if it is possibly a legit self-defense scenario, it still doesn't matter because the dog is too dumb to properly evaluate threats. And, for all is it's attacking that person for some random reason. So I think we need to get that narrative into the space also, is that no, dogs don't have rights. They don't have a right to life. They certainly don't have a right to self-defense, not against humans, other animals maybe, but not us. Okay, that's a right that's reserved for human beings, period.
I was just going to say that because they don't understand premeditation. They don't understand any of these things. So why give them rights that they don't even know how to impose themselves?
All right, exactly. Because, really, to hold a right, you have to understand how to express it properly, right? So if you're going to say, okay, if we have self-defense rights, that means that, to hold that right, you have to be able to properly evaluate a threat. And dogs can't do that. They can't. They're not smart enough. So, because like somebody could be pointing a gun at you and the dog is just wagging his tail, the tongue hanging out, because he doesn't know what a gun is or what it can do. So ergo, it's like, if they can't properly evaluate threats, then they, don't have self-defense rights, period. So, and it goes for all these other things, right to life, public access rights, the whole 9 yards. One thing I bring up from time to time is I think that, the animal rights people are part of this problem because they promote the idea that, animals, although animal almost always means dog, right, have equivalent rights to us. And I disagree totally. Maybe if the only right they have perhaps is a right to be treated humanely. That's it. You know, none of this other stuff. So, because they're too dumb. So, what else do we got? Like I said, I wanted to go over this. I know, like Sheepie, we were talking about. I know that the Bernard case comes up from. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. Let's go back to Dog's Bite for a minute. This past week was really something for dog bite related fatalities. Because on the 10th, Thursday, there was a man killed in Albany, New York. The day before, this newborn was killed in California. And let's see. Oh, this was a really good case. The day before that, there was another dog bite fatality. This was in Texas. That's an interesting case. I'd like to drill into this one a little bit. What do we have? Okay, so there was like 3 this past week. So this was a really interesting case. So this woman here was babysitting a 1-year-old, and she had a 13-year-old child of her own. And there was also multiple XL bullies in the house. So she went out, she left the baby in the care of the 13-year-old, and Fido and Rover decided this would be a good time to delete it was interesting that they went after the baby, but talk about a horror movie scenario. Actually, they arrested the babysitter first, and what's interesting was, where do they think? Apparently, this is a charge that can bring 5 to 99 years in prison in the state of Texas. So, maybe we've turned a corner, because there are those other 2 loons that got that elderly man killed with their pit bulls, and they're on their way to prison. They're both given 15 plus years. So that's encouraging. This is encouraging also, because I think it's a good, a good common sense step towards, rolling up the dangerous dog problem, is holding the owners accountable, because, they get these things because they're confident that, if the dogs do create a bad outcome, nothing's going to happen to them. But this case, talk about like a horror movie scenario. This is like something out of like a John Carpenter movie or something. So, okay, the caregiver, at a certain point, okay, Miss Rodriguez left the house, left the baby in custody of her 13-year-old daughter. 13-year-old and the baby were in a bedroom, okay. Their understanding was an effort to keep the baby sequestered from the dogs, because these dogs were known to cause damage. At a certain point, the 13-year-old was in the bedroom with a 1-year-old. When the dogs forced their way into the room, there is another site where they showed a photo of that. They basically tore through the door to get to that. Talk about a horror movie scenario. The dogs were able to force their way into the bedroom, and at that point began biting the baby. The 13-year-old was able to maintain control of the baby, but at this point, and what's being described as almost a tug of war for the baby between at least one of the dogs and the little girl. At a certain point, additional dogs came into the room as well. The little girl, the 13-year-old, spent several minutes trying to fight them off. She was able to get the baby and herself into a bedroom, it was a bathroom. So they retreated to the bedroom. The dogs forced their way into the bedroom, right? And then the bedroom had an attached bathroom, right? So the dogs broke into the bedroom. They retreated into the attached bathroom, shut the door, right? They then forced their way into the bathrooms. The dogs have now broken down 2 interior doors to get to this baby. They then began to resume their attack on not just the baby, but also the 13-year-old. killed. She was also bitten in the process. So this has some interesting visualization here. Okay, so she had to actually leave the baby behind while she went to get her cell phone, came back to resume fighting with the dogs over the baby. At a certain point, she was able to call for help. She then took the baby and went to another bedroom, at which point she was able to put the baby on the floor and barricade the door using her body to prevent the dogs from coming into that bedroom. When deputies arrived, that's when they were able to come in, take custody of the scene, take control of the scene. So I guess at this point, the infant had been sustained fatal injuries, hadn't died yet. So at that point, I was in critical condition, able to get, okay, blah, blah, blah. The injuries are pretty substantial. Well, this is a horror movie scenario where the dogs force their way into the bedroom. You retreat to the bedroom, shut the door. The dogs break down the door into the bedroom, then retreat into the attached bathroom. The dogs break down that door and resume the attack. Like, does it sound like a reasonable choice of family pet that can do something like this? This, I shouldn't laugh, but it is. It's so bad. In a way, it's so bad, it's good. This is insane. This is absolutely insane.
You got to look at it from a Nutter's point of view. I'm going to play Nutter's advocate. What happened was, that kid, that baby, did something to those dogs that the dogs just couldn't stand. And so they were just, instinctually going to try to discipline the young lad for his discretion against them. That's right. So they wanted to, because, they were XL bullies, they wanted to extra nanny him. Yeah. So that's all they were doing.
Yeah, they dogs are great. That's one take. They probably add that, dogs are really good judges of human character, and actually see the kid was the reincarnation of Hitler. So by doing this, we got spared World War III, right? So, they're good boys.
Referring back to the list of euphemisms, I guess that we could assume the dog was exhibiting mouthiness.
Yep.
And was mouthy, not aggressive.
Yep.
And perhaps it was having persistent mouthing.
Yep.
And the dog has a bouncy play style, and due to his bounciness, children must be 8 years or older. So if that baby had been, at least 8, this probably wouldn't have happened because the dog was just over exuberant.
Yeah, well, it was a kid's fault for not being older. He should have been 8 years old, and then it would have all been good, right?
Yeah.
Dog is
that little girl. That 13-year-old is going to be destroyed for life because of that ignorant bitch.
Yep.
I mean, that is about the harshest I'm going to be, because you have to understand that this 13-year-old was fighting back multiple dogs in multiple barricades and having a tug of war with a dog she fed. A dog that she cuddled with, a dog that gave her kisses all the time, right? Oh, it's choking me up because this is so disgusting, because these people just don't get it. They don't care. All they care about is dogs. And I guarantee you, there's a part of this story where they're going to try to rehabilitate those dogs and put them in another home.
Yep. Well, I think what's interesting is the owner is not cooperating.
No, she didn't want to. She didn't want to give him up.
Yeah, she didn't want
First she did, and then she was like, "You're going to euthanize him." Oh, no, you're not.
Are you serious? I was wondering what became. I figured, have they seized the dogs, or they're?
Well, I think what it was.
They picked them up, but they haven't euthanized them yet, because the video, I remember IHD, and then I went and watched it on my own, not to cut you off. But At first, she was cooperating, and then when she found out they were going to take him into custody, she fought against it. And then it was this big, ugly brown one with blood all on its face and snout and everything. And she's petting it and loving on it and everything. And they're trying to get it in the truck, and it's pulling away from them. So they had to pick this big, fat, nasty beast up and put it in the truck. And then she's rubbing it and petting it, and I'm like, oh my God, I had to stop watching. It was making me mad.
Yeah, look at what it just look at this home. Like, look at how look at this, right? Because these are some photos taken by police. Nothing of the victim. So this was one of the doors. So the dogs
were chewing it apart.
They tore it apart. They tore the door
carpet, everything.
So all
and
of
look,
this
she had
filth
baby
isn't just
gates.
from- yeah, that's not just
She
from
had
one,
baby
from one
gates to
incident. That
stop
house
them.
is
Sorry, Sheepy, go ahead.
That's insane. Oh no, sorry. I was just saying, like, all of that filth is not from just that incident. Like, that's
Yep.
the house they just live in. Like,
Yep,
that's
yeah. There's holes in the wall, probably from the dogs just tearing up the walls.
just chewing drywall.
Yeah, yummy. Oh God, yeah. This
It's because they're bored. They need stimulation.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to be shot. Nothing is that destructive.
Yeah, look at that. I guess too, it's probably I don't know if they were able to get under here or if they just pushed the finally just broke the latch, or just tore the tore out the latch or whatever. Because, well, going back to how strong dogs are, it's like, yeah, an XL bully can defeat, most interior doors in homes are really just for privacy. They're not all that secure. So yeah, a large, but of course it goes to the point that, having something like that inside the home is a terrible idea, just on its face. So yeah, this was an interesting case. The, talking about dogs though, talking about these cases, the other case from last week, talking about, actually, let's go back to that, because what happened to, have they been impounded? Oh, here it goes. Yeah, 4 XL bullies were seized from the home, but not without resistance. The owner says, the owner didn't want to give us the dogs. She even tried to barter. Okay, we're going to give you this one, but not these others, right? The deputy stepped in and took the dogs by force. At least 3 of the dogs are present and or participated in the attack. Owner has been uncooperative with investigators. She refused to give a statement. She didn't have anything to say to us. Well, probably a defense attorney would say that's a good idea because you don't want to, incriminate yourself. But yeah, I don't know. She's probably going to, fight. She's going to, petition to keep the dogs alive. I expect, because that's very, very common.
She's going to, because what she understands is, and this is what the Nutters are starting to do, is that the fact that they know that if they say anything, any past aggression, then that's going to give the dog a bite history. But all they're going to say is, oh, there's only this one incident. They just happened to kill the kid, but that's okay. We can rehome them.
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. They'll say, yeah, he just needs their right forever home, but one without kids, right? It's like, that's what it's going to say. It's going to say it's better off in a home without children, right? What does that mean? Well, the dog killed a kid. That's what that translates into. Often like killer dogs. Oh, but here's the other case that's kind of interesting. That's like this. There was, this one, where this man was killed by pit bulls behind a residence. Let me see where I can find that. Okay, Albany police are currently investigating a dog attack that occurred this evening in the 500 block of Central Avenue. Okay, officers, blah, blah, blah. So this attacked by several dogs. One of the responding officers discharged his duty weapon Talk about like euphemistic terms. Yeah, one of the cops blew a dog away. The male was pronounced deceased at the scene. Okay. But here's what's interesting too. All the dogs have been accounted for. I think there was 20. It was a property next door was a pit bull hoarder. They had 24 dogs, I believe. I said all of the dogs, like, oh, well, Sheepie, I guess that's good. It looks like your neighbor has like relocated themselves to Albany.
Maybe I haven't seen her in a few days, so
maybe that's what happened. All the dogs have been accounted for.
It's a relief.
Yeah. And the Albany Police Department are currently in the process of placing them in an appropriate homing facility. Homing facility? What's that? It's kind of strange. They're putting him in a shelter. Okay, so, but even Colleen had all the dogs have been accounted for. The department is currently placing in the process of placing an appropriate homing facility. So she writes, yeah, that's an interesting choice of words, since an adoption center is called a rehoming facility. So we hope these dogs are not going to be rehomed. I second the motion. Okay. So, yeah, what are they? But again, talk about like the passive aggressive language. Does that mean? But they're not saying flat out, yes, these dogs are going to be placed in other homes. They're kind of obfuscating what's actually going on here, and I'm sure perhaps that's the intention. It's like, okay, yeah, these dogs were, killed somebody, so let's just adopt them out. We'll just find their, perfect, forever home, and it'll all be good.
If you refer back to that list, go ahead.
Oh, just real quick, they talk over it. That's all they do.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Sheepie?
If you go back to that 125 behavioral terms list, there is actually one on here that says the dog is overly exuberant, a term used by a senior state HSUS director after her dog killed a woman.
Yeah.
So they might just be
I think I know who that.
Yeah, the woman was I remember that.
Oh, that was I think, is that Annie Hornish?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's, talk about like a crazed, super nutter. Yeah, Annie Hornish she wasn't a U.S. congressperson. I believe she was a state representative in Connecticut. Yes. And, talk about how, nutters getting what they want through the political process, because she was only in for one term, because what she did was she got herself elected to the legislature, and really for the sole purpose of passing a law, or passing a preemption law, because Connecticut's a preemption state, meaning that you can't discriminate against dogs by breed or looks. And she got that passed. And at one point, she was also the HS. Let me look that up, because I think there's probably some language on her in here. I know this conversation is kind of going sideways, but it's all good, right? Yeah, Annie Hornish. I'll go.
I think these are the most fun when we kind
of. Yeah, this is 2019 dog bite fatality. Right, pit bull belongs to HS Annie Hornish. So this elderly woman was killed.
2 million?
Yeah. So, well, 2 million, because what happened was a family of Janet DeLeo, who was the victim, raised a settlement for $2 million in their lawsuit against the owners of the dog, which is Annie Hornish and her husband. The rescue pit bull belonged to former state representative Annie Hornish, who continues to be the Connecticut senior state director of the Humane Society of the United States. Attacked and killed DeLeo by inflicting a level 6 bite. Then Hornish then denied this and falsely claimed DeLeo died due to falling. Well, that's interesting because even Why did she fall over? She didn't just fall over. She fell over because a dog attacked her.
And how did the fall cause her body to become riddled with dog bites? Like, this just
Exactly.
so insane. Like, this case really made me so mad, because imagine living to be 95, and she seemed to be a pretty, like, active 95-year-old. Like,
Yep.
you know, she was still having, like, quality of life, and to end in such a horrific manner, and because this absolute disgusting nutter just, like, has a dangerous dog, and
Yep.
then, like, runs, like, allows other people to adopt dangerous dogs out into the community.
Yep. Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, that's
But
just
the
it
other
because
part of it is that they hide. They're always lying. Why can't they just say, "Oh, my dog made a mistake," and they would have just gotten a slap on the wrist? No, they're gonna lie and say she fell, and like you said, she magically got bitten.
Yep. Yep. This is interesting also. The DeLeo estate is expected to be paid in a lump sum within 30 days and will be paid by the Hornish's homeowners insurance company, even as that company is suing them. So the insurance company is paying off the estate, but they're also suing the Hornishes, right? So they say the company is accusing the couple of lying on their insurance application about owning two pit bulls. Yeah, because many insurance companies won't insure a home with pit bulls, but there's a couple of things. One is in some cases it depends on how the preemption law is written or worded. In some cases, it may prevent insurance companies from doing that. So you can't discriminate. Like if you've got everything else being equal, you have to charge the same premium or on, say, a home with a pit bull as one, say, without a pit bull, right? You can't discriminate like that, even though, pit bulls, I mean, dogs generally. I mean, I think dog bites are the number one payout on homeowners policies. I forget, but I think that's true. So anyway, the company is accused a couple of lying on their insurance application. But here's the problem: even when that's legal for the insurance company to do, they don't check. Right? They'll ask you, like, do you own dogs? No. They're like, oh, okay. They don't follow up. They don't, drive by the house later to see if they get charged by pit bulls or anything. So the company argues it would not have issued a policy to the Hornishes. Well, goes back to lying, had the couple informed them that they owned two pit bulls. The Hornishes, oh, here it goes. Here it comes.
Here's the little cherry on top.
Yeah, now claim that neither of their dogs are pit bulls. So I guess they
Well,
can't.
here it comes. They're
Yeah, here
nanny
it
dogs.
comes. You know,
It's a different breed.
yeah. So the pit bull that killed DeLeo, Dexter, continues to be on death row in Suffield because the dog was impounded, and the Hornish is agitated for years to keep the dog alive. This
Oh
this
my
is
God.
probably this is interesting. We kind of went sideways into this, but this is a really good case, and it shows how screwed up the space is. So this was from 2019. So this article was written years ago. The couple has been fighting the destruction order of the dog for over a year now. I think it went on for 4 years total. Okay. After a protracted dangerous dog hearing was held over the summer, the state upheld the original decision of the Suffield Animal Control Officer to euthanize the dog. The hearing officer dismissed a completely unfounded version of events that the Hornishes contrived. Okay. Oh, here we go. The Hornishes intend to appeal the decision made by the state, claiming their dog was, quote, provoked by the DeLeo's home health aide. There you go. The whole provocation thing. So
When was this article written?
Well, this was written in, it probably could write a book about this. Well, this was first written in 2019 and it was updated in 2021. So let's see if we can find
Because
some.
I just Googled it, and as of June 2023, that dog had still not been euthanized. They
What?
were still
Yeah,
fighting it.
that's
June 6, 2023, it says, a dog's fate remains in limbo 4 years after an attack that killed an older woman, while the pet's owners are maintaining their fight to keep the animal alive. Owners Neil and Annie Hornish have filed a second appeal to prevent their dog, Douchebag, from being euthanized. The couple's appeal of a 2020
I don't get it.
it's insane. So the dog, let's see, uh, this appeal is expected to be heard by a superior court judge. Imagine the amount of legal resources and just time wasting. A
yeah.
superior court judge is hearing a case from a dog that killed a 95-year-old woman 4
It's a
years
pit
before.
bull. It's
Well,
like
no, it's not a
they're
pit
gonna
bull.
expel
Oh,
how
here's
many resources they can to maintain this dog being taken care of to the fullest ability of being. And I bet you the dog's getting lots of love, lots of treats, getting walked, playtime. The dog's just not sitting in a kennel.
yeah.
You know what
Oh,
they
here.
call it? They're saying it's a pointer mix.
Oh my god.
Pointer mix. Oh, that's a bit original. Usually it's either like terrier mix or lab mix. But
Yeah.
here's the thing was actually, if you could still see my screen, was I know like the band Pitbull sub has done a lot. Okay. Yeah. So she's a former
Wasting
state rep.
taxpayers' money.
Yeah. Oh,
Love
apparently
that.
too, this dog had a bite history. So this isn't
There
the
you
first
go.
time. That's another one you always
Yeah,
see.
then it's been a stat. Okay, so hold on a second, just to interject. So we have an established pattern. We both have a little bit of a legal thing that AU. So okay, so we've talked about this before. So hold on. So the guidelines have already been established that the dog's a risk. The dog is violent. The dog is aggressive. The dog has a bite history. Now has deleted a person. But because and that's clearly a pit bull by its head, that it's a
Oh, yeah.
pointer mix, and they've got the money to keep expending the taxpayers' time. It's $150,000 spent on legal. Come on, dude.
Well,
It's a
also,
waste of money.
in the article I was reading, and this might be on that thread you're on too, since I think they have some updated information, but the couple was originally allowed to visit Douchebag for an hour each week, but that practice ended in imagine going to visit your dog in jail, like your dog's in jail for killing a woman, basically. Anyways, about a year later, the Hornishes stopped paying for Douchebag's care, which has since cost Suffield, which I guess is the town or whatever,
Yep.
more than $30,000, according to town attorney Derek Donnelly.
Yeah, and I remember at one point the Hornishes were saying, well, isn't that a waste of taxpayers' money? Like, why is the city expending those resources and just trying to kill a dog? And it's like, no, they're expending resources trying to protect the public because, cutting the dog loose, and, puts people in danger, right? It's a proven dangerous dog. And it's a moral hazard. Like I said, that well, dogs generally, and pit bulls in particularly, are an attractive nuisance, and they're a moral hazard. So it's like if you cut the dog loose, what does that send? It says like, yeah, if your pit bull or whatever dog you have kills somebody, don't worry about it. It's all good, right? So I mean, really, the Hornishes belong in prison. Probably it seems like they're people with a fair amount of political capital because she was a politician. She's, a director of the state level humane society and all that. And as somebody, it's probably kind of difficult to go after. As opposed to, say, those two idiots in Texas that are probably, stone cold broke and nobody likes. But yeah, this is a really
That's a pit
interesting
bull
case.
too.
Yeah. Here
That's
she
all
is.
she has is pit bulls.
She, well, because she advocates for him, because
Thank you.
when she was in the legislature, she wrote up the bill she wrote up the preemption law. right? That, I mean, sort of indirectly protects these things. Like you can't discriminate against dogs by breed, meaning you can't discriminate against pit bulls. You can't discriminate against any dog, right? So, but yeah, this is a really, really fascinating case. I don't even know what was the final outcome, because this, let me
I'm
get
still
at it.
trying to find that. And if you don't, while you look, I'd like to read another
Sure.
line or two out of this article, just because it's
Sure.
horrible. Okay, so the plaintiff's entire provocation argument is a fabricated story intended to shift blame onto Miss Nichols for Miss D'Aleo's death, and their reliance on it should be viewed with appropriate skepticism, the town stated in its mail filing. In its May filing, sorry. The state responded last week by arguing the evidence from the case doesn't support douchebag being provoked. It defies common sense that during douchebag's biting of Miss D'Aleo, in which he ultimately killed her, that Miss Nichols' attempt to stop the attack could be considered provocation.
Oh,
So essentially, this nutbag is trying to argue that her dog was provoked by, I guess, the woman's caregiver attempting to stop the attack. And
yeah.
then it goes on to say, and recall, before I read this next line, that the woman claimed Miss D'Aleo's death was caused by falling. Okay. Ryan Selig, Suffield's animal control officer, testified in 2020 that it was impossible to determine how many times D'Aleo was bitten because one of her legs was missing so much flesh. Selig described the attack as the worst he had ever seen. So the dog basically ate one of her legs off, and this nutbag, head of the Humane Society, is saying that she died from falling. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so unbelievable.
Look at some of these comments. Like, actually, this is a really good one. This needs to be spread far and wide. This textbook sociopath, meaning Hornish, is a kind of person running the most established dog or rescue organization at the highest level. Pet rescue has been completely captured by psychotic criminals like this woman. Okay, its mission has been changed from public safety and animal welfare to slaughter humans by the thousands and bathe the golden statue of the rescue pity in their blood. Yeah, so yeah, this is another like battlefield level injury. It wasn't a fall. But he's going back to what they're talking about. They lie, and they use all kinds of passive aggressive language. Even you look at what Hornish wrote here, I guess this was on her Twitter page or whatever. We have evidence to believe this was an exuberant. Oh, was exuberant. Was it? Let me go back to the shelter speak, right? Where does it say exuberant? Right? Exuberant. The dog is exuberant. He became very exuberant. Let's see, where is this? Find
While you're searching, I have found
yes.
a more recent article from this year, July 21st of 2024. That dog is still alive.
It's still alive. Wow.
Yes.
Oh.
Wow.
That lady is long dead.
Wow.
Well, here's the
5
funny thing.
years.
They 40,000 years ago, we had a crocodile that ran on land that would chase human beings. Human beings wanted to recreate it with the pit bull. And that's exactly all I can see, because it runs around. You have it as a so-called pet, and it's still killing people, and they're everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, here's what's interesting too is like, okay, so the dog is still like, I lost track of this. Like, I mean, back when I was blogging, I would do deep dives into this case. It sort of happened after I started my hiatus. But this is a very, very interesting case too. And I might actually blog about this just to get the statement of facts. You could probably write a book about just this one case. But it's interesting, what the dog owner is saying here. It says the dog is, exuberant, right? What does it say here? Dog is overly exuberant. So what does she say here? Oh, he was exuberant. Okay. Greeting mistake is attack followed by hitting with a metal step stool. Because like you said, Sheepy, that they're claiming that the act of the dog attacks the elderly woman. The health aide tries to beat off the dog, but they're saying that the attack was caused by something that happened after it started the attack. So you can't build a causal relationship there. But in any case, Dexter has passed 3 behavior exams and passed with flying colors. That's the other one they use because they have these BS temperament tests. It's like, look, dummies, the dog flunked the only test that matters. That's the real world test, right? Whatever like BS, exam they come up with to test these things doesn't matter, okay? So it's been such misinformation. All this like political like jargon here has been loudly and repeatedly spread by a few people. The town BOS lost in a hateful eye for an eye punitive state of being that is a hallmark of mobs. That is why they are behaving so irrationally and with such reckless disregard for taxpayers. But actually, too, as we talk about how authorities are typically so lax and so unresponsive. That's where my handle comes from. It's animal uncontrol. But actually, I really respect what the town is trying to do here. I mean, they're doing what they can within the limit of the law, right? Because there's a lot of protection for these things, not just the animals themselves, but the people who own them. Annie Hornish, she's a criminal psychopath, and she belongs in prison. Not doing this, and the dog should have been, deleted immediately. But they're using all this. So, the town is spending a lot of money to prosecute the case. But in most places, they wouldn't. They would just, rather than endure this long, drawn-out legal battle, they just give up and they say, you know what? It's like, we're just fine. Take your dog and go home. We give up. Right? We're done. We can't do it. And that's kind of what they do also is, again, our adversary, is they try to wear people out. It's like a war of attrition. And people get burnt out on this stuff. So okay, so the dogs. Sorry, so the dog's still alive as of July. Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate you pointing that out because I would not have seen that unless you said that, because I was sitting over here fuming. But you pointing that out, that they're actually spending the money, and then you know what they're going to do after they win the case and we all get to cheer after 5 years, hopefully soon, that dog is finally put down. They're going to hand them the bill for stepping that off on them because that was shitty.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
actually,
so I'm reading
this most recent article that I could find says that they have court dates scheduled as far out as July 17th, 2025.
Oh my God.
And it says that according to a FOIA request, the town has paid $87,263 in legal fees on the case as of August 2023, which brings the total from the beginning of the case to $162,585.36.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's what I said, 150. That's what I was calculating. Yeah, it cost them 150. So I was off for $17,000. But I mean, at that point, what does it matter? I really hope they toss the bill all on their pocket. They have to, plus whatever. Wait, hold on. It's more than that. It's over 200,000 because they're taking care of that stupid mutt too.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, I think the cost to house, because the thing is, it's expensive to house a dog like this because it basically has to live in solitary confinement. It can't just be put in with the other dogs. It's there's all kinds of it's a vicious dog, so all kinds of special precautions have to be taken. So it's kind of like, if you ever see the movie Silence of the Lambs, how they used to have to handle, Hannibal Lecter, like they had to put the hockey mask on his face so he couldn't bite people and things like that. So, dealing with this dog, it's very, very expensive to keep. So,
yeah, it says they've admitted the Hornishes themselves will not divulge how much they've spent on legal fees, but they did admit to paying $42,000 in kennel fees, while the town has paid at least $75,000 in kenneling costs as of April 2024.
Yeah, well, here it says the town's on
Oh,
the hook, so it costs $66 a day to house the dog, right? It says despite
so
draining.
one dog is going to cost $400,000. $400,000 for a trash mutt.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like, well, what some people, again, like Hornish and some of the other dog nutters are arguing was like, well, the town could stop this financial hemorrhage by simply dropping the case. Well, here's what they're advocating for here. So at one point, upstate New York Farm offers to take in dog that killed Connecticut woman, because that's something that comes up often, is that they'll say, okay, well, we'll put the dog in a sanctuary, right? Almost like a minimum security prison in a sense. But the problem is, like everything else in this space, there's no oversight or actual standards. So the dog is still going to have access to people and other animals and be able to kill. So yeah, we'll just dump the problem in somebody else's lap. So some farm town in upstate New York is going to have this monster, injected, into their community. And that's not a solution either. I think that's, per se unethical. But that happens a lot, where instead of putting the dog down, the judge will order the dog removed from the jurisdiction. It actually happens a lot here in Florida. So if a dog attacks somebody, rather than order the dog put down, the judge will say, well, it gets banished or exiled, right? But then what you have is this kind of this flow, or this current of dangerous dogs moving from county to county to county. Well, I got a ping.
That was me. Sorry, I was just sending you
Okay,
this
no, that's
updated
cool.
article. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I thought that at some point in this case, maybe I'm mixing cases up. I thought at some point in this case, they had managed to get it moved to like a different, uh, maybe that I'm just thinking of a different case because there's so many of these.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, perhaps. I mean, like you said, that does happen, quite often. The other thing that happens often, back last decade, I was blogging about Mickey, Mick the Mauler. He was basically mauled a 4-year-old, and rather than the dog being put down, it's interesting is that the owner did not advocate for the dog in that case. The owner just signed the dog over to the county and he was done. He wanted nothing to do with him. But it was a third party. It was an outfit called the Lexus Project, essentially sued or petitioned to get custody of the dog. And they cut a deal where the dog would actually go to jail, to the woman's county jail, where it'd be cared for by the inmates there. And so that was a deal that was cut. So the dog was put in jail, but as soon as the dog was put in jail, then they started agitating to get him out, because they were saying, look, you can't put a dog in jail because it has no clue what that place is or why he's there, which is true. You shouldn't put a dog in jail. He should have just been put down. But that's the other thing, too, is they often pull a bait and switch on this kind of stuff, where they'll say, okay, we'll confine the dog to a facility, or we'll relocate him to a remote area. But then it just boomerangs back because, again, because of that bait and switch. Then they say, oh, or we'll rename, Dexter to Diesel, right? Now he's like, he's a whole new dog with like a clean, he's got a clean sheet, and you just bring the dog back or turn him loose someplace else. There's a lot of bad faith acting in this. They always agitate to get the dog put back on the street at some point.
Yeah, it is. Yes, and I scrolled through down a little bit further in this article, and they have attempted to do that. They've
Yep.
offered the board or whatever the town three solutions. The first was a drafted fencing plan for their yard, which Annie said she ran by the Beardsley Zoo, who agreed it would be sufficient for maintaining a dog of Dexter's size. The plan also called to have Dexter muzzled when in public. The other two solutions would have sent, oh, sorry, I want to refer to the dog as douchebag, off to facilities equipped to hold animals with aggressive tendencies. One is in the state of Connecticut, though the Hornishes chose not to name it out of concern they may receive social media backlash. And then the other shelter that agreed to take douchebag belongs to Annie Hornish's former colleague and current friend, Diana Urban. Urban served 18 years in the Connecticut House of Representatives from 2001 to 2019, and she's most known for her work on animal rights legislation. She now lives in Chatham, New York, a small rural town located in Upper Hudson Valley, where she and her husband own a home and ranch. They've got like a 13-acre farm with horses, donkeys, and apparently they'd like to add aggressive pit bulls to the mix.
I guess, yeah. It'll just make the whole thing complete, right?
Yeah, so they have been attempting for years now to just let this dog be, I guess, released to either their care with a Jurassic Park fence they'd like to build, or the care of these supposed animal rescues, where, like you said, the dog would probably end up just boomeranging back to them at some point because they're a bunch
Yep.
of lying criminals.
Yeah.
So basically, like I said, they're going to get the dog back. They are trying to keep it alive long enough, like you said, to either wear out the legislation to they say, okay, I mean the prosecutor where they say, we don't want to deal with this anymore. Go ahead, take the dog. Or there's a facility somewhere here, there, or somewhere else where the dog's going to mysteriously end up back in their care. And mysteriously, it's going to attack somebody else. But what's going to happen is it's going to have a whole new name.
Exactly.
Yep.
This isn't douchebag. This is asshole.
This isn't douchebag.
Yeah,
This is
right.
asshole.
It's a totally different non-pit
But I really
bull.
like what
It's
this,
exactly the
talk
same
about
for some
somebody
reason.
like, we should give a shout out to this town selectman. This first, I mean, he's doing this guy. I mean, you could say maybe he's not doing enough, but it looks like he's doing
The prosecutor
max
deserves us. I'll stand up for him.
right.
Now.
He's doing the best that can be done given the circumstances. So, because really, it's this town selectman that's sort of leading the crusade against the dog. But here's what it says: there is too great a risk the dog will escape and injure or kill another person. The town would rather pay the legal fees and boarding costs, okay, to defend the Hornish's many lawsuits, as opposed to putting another innocent elderly woman, a child, or the general public at risk. Bravo. Right? He's doing the best he can, because that's why a lot of these, the dangerous dogs just get released, because of cases like this, because they're confident. It's like, okay, we'll just endlessly sue and petition to spare the dog until the prosecution or the government or whoever just is worn out. They burn out on it, and they're like, whatever, fine, just take your dog back. And anybody that goes to, there shouldn't be that many protections for these things. They should not be able to endlessly appeal this. Right? It's ridiculous. But that's the thing is that it makes me think of your neighbor, Sheepie, because some of those dogs might be dogs like this, dogs that have been, declared dangerous in another jurisdiction and deported, right? So it winds up in the hands of that, your neighborhood rescue angel there.
Well, how would you know? You would never
Well,
be told the truth, even if it
but
was that.
it wouldn't surprise me if some of them were. So, because that may be what that is. It's some kind of, it's some kind of sanctuary for these, dangerous dogs.
It's just I'm so disgusted. This case, every time I read about it again, it makes me so angry. Like these people shouldn't be allowed, like you said, to just continually appeal. Apparently, they've also filed a civil lawsuit against the town. Like they should be
Oh,
thrown in jail for
Yep.
wasting taxpayer money, for killing a woman. I hold them responsible for the action. That dog should have been put down 5 years ago. Like none of this should be happening at
Yep.
all. Like it's
What's the
just
other thing
disgusting.
too is that, holding the owners of dogs criminally liable would prevent much of this because they're going to be too busy trying to keep their dead asses out of prison to try to save the dog. So that would be helpful
well,
also.
hold on. The other part of it is you have to look at it. We forgot they're fighting this on two fronts. They still have to deal with the insurance company. And you
Well,
think the
the owner,
insurance
yeah.
company is going to give up on them? The insurance company's got way deeper pockets than they do. They're going to pay
Yeah,
for it out of someone
particularly
else's
after
premium.
after having to pay out $2 million.
$2
I'm sure
million? Oh,
they're really unhappy about that because it's an insurance fraud case, and that should be criminal also because they lied on their insurance forms about what pets they had. And again, that's a pretty serious matter also. Like I said, it's insurance fraud. Jeez.
I wonder what became of in that older article on Dogs Bite from 2019. It mentioned that they were being sued by their insurance company.
Yep.
I wonder whatever became of that lawsuit. How do these
I,
people have this much money? Like,
that's
yeah.
what I was
were they
just saying. That's what I
independently
was just saying.
wealthy? Like,
Well, she might be.
Well, that's
is
what I
She
was
this
also
saying. They're
might be.
fighting this on two fronts.
Yeah. She might have some. There might be some GoFundMe money there. Um, or maybe there's somebody with maybe they've got family money or something. Or her husband is rich. Who knows? Um, but apparently they
All
think
right.
it's worth their while. Well, it goes back to this. She's saying, well, why is the town spending so much money on this case? Well, why are you, dummy? Why don't they just give up? Right?
right?
It's
It's
like
insane.
the dogs. If this goes on much longer, the dog's just going to die of old age. I mean, it's been confined in the shelter for When did this first happen? When it was
2019.
2019, so it's 5 years ago.
2019. Yeah.
And you
2019.
know what else? They're complaining how inhumane it is that the dog is being kept. They're concerned about how it's inhumane
Sequestered.
that the dog is in containment or whatever. And as of like 2021 or something, this is a long article. I sent it because I think it's worth deep diving into a bit. At some point, they were disallowed from continuing physical
Conjugal visits.
interaction with yeah, exactly.
I'm channeling Chef Muttmeat. Yeah, I need a conjugal visit with the dog.
Because they were trying to no, get this in the article, and I know we've already spent kind of
They
a
were
lot
trying
of
to
time
take it
on this.
out.
No, this is good stuff.
They were trying to apparently they were either like weirdly trying to bribe and then threaten that animal control officer who testified that it was the worst dog bite case he'd ever seen. Like when they were doing their conjugal visits with the dog, he was there obviously. And they were making like weird they were trying to get him to like change his testimony or something. Sorry, it's back in the beginning of the article. I have to go back and find exactly what happened. But after that, they were basically no longer allowed to visit the dog physically. And then at the end of this article, it says they've changed their story multiple times. Again, first claiming that she died from falling, and apparently now they're recently started claiming that she died of a heart attack instead of the dog mauling. And now they're claiming too that the town's position that their dog needs to be euthanized is politically motivated.
Oh,
It's just
well,
they
that's
never stop lying.
But you got to look at how demented this is. Like, these are people fighting for the life of a dog. Like, they are going through all these circumstances for a dog, for a stupid trash mutant creature like a dog. Like, they're jumping through all these, anything they can do. Like, they're like, okay, well, maybe this time, maybe I'll go to court and fake a heart attack, and maybe that'll get us some extra love for the case. I just don't get it. Like, from what Sheepie is describing, like, I'm really going to have to read this article now and really get a good laugh, because it seems like they're trying to just go through the book and just spin through the law book and go, okay, we're going to try this tactic next.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's a kitchen sink approach. Just, or throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. This is interesting also that we've known for weeks that Hornish failed to license the dog after owning the pit bull for just over 4 months. So the lawsuit states that Hornish also failed to provide a valid rabies vaccination certificate for the dog. Another violation of state law. I kind of get the impression, I was reading up on her, she's one of these sort of granola types, who might be like, I've run into dog owners like that. They don't get their dogs vaccinated because, I don't know, it's going to give Rover autism or something. But that's taken pretty seriously in a lot of cases. We were talking about rabies last time. It's a very, very serious, it's worse than Ebola. It's a very serious matter. So both add weight to Hornish's negligent dog ownership. And it goes back to what, one of their stock excuses. Well, it's irresponsible owners. So right here, what do we have here? We have an irresponsible owner. What do we do about these irresponsible owners? Oh, and here's another one. Dexter had 2 previous bites in Norwich prior to being rehomed to Annie. The dog was already in the legal system. Again, so the dog, again, it's a repeat offender. If all dogs that attacked were summarily put down, probably that would cure 90% of the dangerous dog problem. And that's even without even getting into BSL or even criminally prosecuting the owners, because they're just allowed to just attack over and over and over again until there's something like this happens.
You know what's interesting in the article I sent you? It's fairly long, and it goes into Annie Hornish's objections to this bite history itself. And she claims in the first bite case that douchebag was involved in, he was the victim, not the perp of the bite. And in the second case, he bit like a man
So when do you
apparently, and she
become a
claims,
victim? When you aggress?
yeah, she claims that the man had no. Similarly to the 95-year-old woman that was killed, she claims the second victim of this dog's bites had no evidence of bites at all. Like, there weren't enough bite wounds. She claims the dog didn't bite him, which is similar to her claims in this case that the woman died of a fall and then of a heart attack or something, like, even though she was basically missing all of the flesh off her lower limbs.
Yeah, but
They have Jedi mind tricks when it comes to dog bites. They don't see them at all.
this is interesting also. It says the Suffield police chose not to bring criminal charges against Hornish after careful consideration and consultation with the Enfield Superior Court State Attorney's Office. Could they prove Hornish had knowledge of the dog's vicious propensities beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And could they do so in a criminal prosecution? I mean, does she really have to know that yes, the dog is definitely going to kill somebody? Particularly, I mean, we're not looking for murder charges here. It's like negligent homicide or perhaps manslaughter, right? You could say, okay, it's not a murder, but if you have if you're harboring a even a potentially dangerous animal, I mean, they try to argue that, well, how could the owner know? Well, how couldn't they know? Right? The dog's got a mouth that could crush a bowling ball. Like, they know. Like, you have to know. Like, you'd have to be impossibly stupid not to know. They know. They know what these dogs are capable of. But but somehow they're allowed to get away with playing dumb. Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, no, they know. They know. Or they should know. That's the thing also. It's like, look, yeah, this is, well, kind of like the ADEP people say. It's like, Chihuahuas don't do stuff like this. Right?
Well,
Because they can't.
It's also one of those things where it's like various movies we could come up with the plots to, and they have this creature that feeds on other humans or whatnot. They just keep feeding it because they don't see that it's infested with this virus. They just got a chain around its neck and they just lock it in the basement. That's how they feel about these dogs. Like, they could like maul a child, eat a baby, eat the cure to cancer, and they just keep looking at that stupid thing with its tongue hanging out its mouth like it's the best thing since who knows what.
Unbelievable. But yeah, this is really interesting stuff. Appeared on November 5th. Annie Hornish appealed in the town of Suffield ballot for police commission. So she was trying to get put on the police commission. The following day, this is really getting weird. This is starting to sound like it's like a case of Law and Order, Canine Edition or something. This is really interesting. So the following day, that was when the pit bull attacked and killed Janet DeLeo. So she gets put, but the next day she gets put. She wants to get on the ballot for the police. But that's talking about how nutters corrupt the process, because this woman, she got herself elected to the state legislature. I don't know if it's mentioned in here, but probably for the specific purpose of getting preemption laws passed, right? To make sure, okay, you can't restrict pit bulls or any other dog breed in the state. Let me see if that's in here. I know I've read a lot of stuff. Legislature. Now, state, what is it? State, I don't know, maybe we'll have to look into that some other time. But she was only in the legislature for one term because she got the law passed and then left. So this was not somebody, interestingly, not somebody with an interest in public service or somebody even interested in becoming a career politician. I just got this one political issue or political point that I want to promote. They don't care about anything else. League of Conservation Voters pertaining to our state's wildlife. Yeah, like pit nutters care about wildlife. Crazy stuff. Maybe we should work on this some more. Maybe next time we can approach this in a more organized way. Although it's been a great conversation, that's why people got to realize how screwed up this space is. It really is. It's a total dumpster fire of fail. And this is one reason why there's so much protection for these things, because people, they like her, like Hornish, they get themselves elected to office so they can rig the system in favor of dogs. Yep.
Yeah, so in their civil case they filed, and basically it says they would be visiting this wherever the dog is being held on a daily basis to bring the dog food and fresh blankets, and then trying to talk to that animal control officer uh, to get him to basically join their crusade to get the dog back. And then they started accusing him of being financially rewarded for ordering the dog to be euthanized, and saying things like, if the town's leadership changed to the next election, his job would be in jeopardy. So I don't know if that was them trying to, like you said, they're trying to get elected so they
Yeah.
can, like, they just seem so incredibly shady
Oh yeah.
over like a single dog that killed a 95-year-old woman. Like, if they're willing to go to this extent for like a dog that killed someone already, it just really makes you wonder, like, like, what are these people like behind closed doors? Like, this is absolutely wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, they
she's
don't care.
well. Remember the Ten Commandments? It's like to them, the life of each dog is of infinite value. So, you're going to have an absolute unconditional right to life in their mindset, right? And so they're, this is in that mindset, all this is worth it. Yeah, like why not just let the government croak the dog and get another one? But
Thank you. But it's an ego thing. They have to have that dog back. That
yep,
dog has to come home.
yep,
Yeah, it kind of is in line with, I mean, it makes sense when you consider the insane lengths that all of these animal rescue, when I say animal, I really mean dog. These
yep.
dog rescue people go to the most insane lengths for like seemingly every single dog, no matter what. It's like every dog to them is worth just like infinity money,
Yep.
or like
Oh yeah.
infinity resources. Like, there's never a case in which they're like, is it really worth it to go to this extreme length for a dog that is, all 125 of those behavioral euphemisms?
But also, you have to look at it from another point of view. They're being charged up from every other nutter in the world behind them. We don't know who's charging them up behind the scenes, or sending them emails, or sending them checks, or sending them cards, or sending them flowers and sending them cookies and shit for doggy support. Who's sending them
Yep.
free treats to go give that dumbass dog? There's somebody behind them that's further pushing the fire, telling them that they're good fighting a good fight
Oh
for
yeah.
all these wonderful dumbass mutts.
Well, a lot of it, yeah, it's almost like you're right. It's sort of a feedback loop because well, first of all, they're all trying to outflank each other on who worships dogs the most, like who's the most devout dog worshiper. And it goes back to the money. It's like, I guess one of you brought up, like, how are they, meaning like, how are the Hornishes paying for this? And there may be some GoFundMe money, or perhaps even one of these organizations is helping fund this in the background. Somebody's, passing them some money under the table, or even over the table for that matter, to keep this thing going. I guess the thing people got to realize too, our adversary is very well funded. Often people, they get into the space, they think it's kind of like the military industrial complex. In other words, it's, profit seeking by, for-profit corporations. There's some of that, but really most of the politicking, most of the money that changes hands are these, nonprofits, and they do raise a lot of money. So, that's the other thing to consider. The other thing I might be interested in too is to, dig into some of these organizations, maybe plant a mole and try to find out like what illegal things they're doing, because I'm sure they're breaking various, tax laws and other, rules in the operation of these .orgs. Very confident. So now, state director. Yeah. Anyway, you know what? We're over 2 hours. I think I'm going to wrap it up. Do either of you have a closing statement or anything you want to add if it just takes a minute or two.
Dogs suck.
It's succinctly
I'll
put.
stick to that one. Yeah.
Yeah, this really went down kind of a rabbit hole. So, but I think it was a good one.
Oh yeah,
It's such a weird case, but I think this case alone contains so many of our talking points, and it just really demonstrates the level of insanity these dog nutters have and the lengths they're willing to go to. Like, this is
yep,
just one case. It's been ongoing for 5 years with no end in sight, really.
yep,
Over we're, the city is over $200,000 in at this point, and God knows how much money the Hornishes have actually spent pursuing this case. And again, like, no end in sight. The civil case has dates set out to 2025. So, and the dog is still just, being fed and maintained this entire
yep,
time. And there's people willing. Here's the other thing. One of her, colleagues who served in the legislature for like how much, like 18 years or something like that, is willing to step in and bring this dangerous dog to her property. It's just, it kind of is just mind-boggling, honestly. I guess
yep.
that's my final thoughts, is just I will never be able to understand the mentality of these nutters. It's just truly mind-boggling, and they don't seem at all remorseful for the death of the woman. Like, the focus is all on the dog is the victim somehow in this, and
Yep.
they're the victims, and like, it's just, these are disgusting subhuman criminals, uh, and they're the ones in charge of these, so-called humane societies. It's
Yep.
just really, this case is truly mind-boggling.
It's the insane society.
Yes.
Just want to add to that real quick. And just, yeah, Sheepy's spot on. It's like this really shows us, and I know, yeah, we did go down a rabbit hole, but it was a good one as well, that we really see how devoted and how crazy these nutters are to support, love, and care for and defend no matter what mutts. Like, they can do no wrong. And like you said too, AU, that they're all trying to one up each other to see who deifies it the most.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It was, like one of the, sort of overarching points, I make. There's something, this goes way beyond, pet preferences or a love of animals. There's something deeply pernicious about all this, right? Like, these are incredibly sick people. I mean, they're like devil worshippers or something. It's like they thirst for death. There's something about this that it's like they actually want to promote human suffering.
Well, I think that is a whole other rabbit hole. We should actually go, maybe do a discussion on that sometime. I got a comment on my channel recently, like yesterday, with someone wanting to discuss the whole Process Church to Best Friends Animal
Oh
Society
yeah, I think
rabbit hole.
we discussed that. Maybe it was before you and I became acquainted, but yeah, there was Best Friends Animal Shelter. Actually, it has its roots in Scientology. So you had, I guess, a couple of, I think they were actually kicked out of the Scientology, church, which is pretty unusual, I think. And then they founded this Process Church, which is, I think, considered to be a Satanist organization. So you sort of watch this whole process, and it sort of, merged into Best Friends Animal Shelter, or Best Friends, I guess it's Best Friends Animal Society that runs Best Friends Animal Shelter, and they have a quote sanctuary in Utah. And I don't know if they probably do bring in some animals that have been, dogs that have been declared dangerous, but that was sort of interesting, the sort of the pedigree of that organization. Like, what did it morph out of? That's very interesting stuff. But here we can get into that. But anyway, you know what? I'm going to wrap it up. Maybe we can do a more disciplined approach to this, because it's a kind of thing I would do when I was blogging. Was I would do a deep dive into something like this, like the Mick the Mauler scenario, and get all the details, all the testimony, find out who all the players are, and I put it together in a series of a blog post. We could do that on here. But in any case, like I said, I'm gonna wrap it up. So where's my Skype window? Oh, there it is. So anyway, thanks for joining. And this is Animal on Control. As always, people first. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining. Talk to you later.
Hey, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye, y'all.
Later, man. Bye.